Right, we're live. I'm going to be talking about how Western men in particular are emotionally repressed. Um, they do not feel, and this is what I've noticed in the UK in particular, um, they are able to express their emotions. So I'm a Muslim. I'm I intend in my live streams to give age-old tested answers to supposedly modern problems, but they're just recycled problems. Um, these problems that we face in society just come about by not following some basic things, um, uh, fundamentals in society. So I would talk about those details. Normally, I have a guest to bounce ideas off and discuss with, but he couldn't make it today. So I put an invite in the live chat. Feel free to join in. We can chat, or you can just comment but through text in the live stream in the live chat. Anyway, part of what I do is I play a video by somebody on YouTube, and kind of analyze what he's got to say. So let's start off with that.
When a guy feels anger, it feels intense. It feels like a threat. And he's been told not to be dangerous. He's been told not to be a threat and not to raise his voice and be a good boy and comply. And some of these things can really shut a man down from feeling his emotions. Don't cry, etc. So it's less of a thinking problem and it's more a lack of modeling what it looks like to feel your feelings. We've gone through generations of men where they just literally were not taught to feel their feelings, or they were actively taught to suppress what they were experiencing. All of these sayings came out of World War II, like man up was to go get into the tank. Suck it up. I don't know if this is 100% true or not, but suck it up meant when you were in the plane and you puked into your air mask, you literally had to suck it back in and swallow it
No
so you
way.
continue fighting. There's all of these adages where men have been put into horrendous situations that require them for survival purposes to deploy disassociation, to literally disassociate from what they are feeling in their body. When a guy feels
Okay, so there's a lot of different interesting ideas there. I want to give my really short version of what the issues are, and I would say fundamentally it's a breakdown of society. So it's not just men that are suffering and are unable to express themselves. It's all of society has become alienated. People are suffering from loneliness, whether they are men or women. So it's good to kind of realize the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is something like when people started becoming atheists, they stopped thinking there's much point in life, right? That's just how logically, if you don't believe in God, you think life is random and you kind of become depressed. And what's the point of doing anything? So emotionally, you're already getting destroyed. And then on top of that, all the kind of structures that religion would bring, even in Christian societies like church, bringing people together, um, and practicing being together, practicing being, being kind to each other, being told that you should be kind to each other, having community and connection. Even family itself has broken down because it's like, oh, what's the point? I mean, should I stay in a relationship? So there's endless things that are breaking down, that are making it difficult for us to feel connected. And then how on earth can we express our feelings if we're already disconnected? So I think those are some of the fundamentals, but there are so many different angles we could go into. So, and I'll keep throwing different ideas out, and feel free to kind of, in the chat, kind of agree, disagree, whatever. It makes it easier for me to keep talking. So one of the, I think I'll kind of, let's break. One of the things I was going to say is, um, our idea of success makes it also really difficult to express our feelings. So that might sound really strange. Our idea of success has two massive problems with our idea of success. Um, a key like think about what a successful person is like. Oh, somebody's won Britain's Got Talent, and why would that be success? Because you beat other people. So our Western idea of success is to beat other people. Like that's gonna make you like want to not be a very friendly person. um and then on top of that, it's such a like to be other people, but not only that, but be the best in the world at something. So um you feel like crap all the time because you're not the best in the world. So all these things don't let you feel, because you're unworthy, you're not successful, therefore you're unworthy, you're a piece of crap, therefore why should anybody listen to you? And there's so many other things, like people don't listen to each other in our individualistic society. So you when you're talking and nobody cares what you're saying, and they're kind of more interested in sharing what they've got to say, and they're people not good at listening in Western societies. um you can't express your feelings then, or you tried it and it doesn't work, and so you stop bothering expressing your feelings. There are endless like details we could go, delve into, depending on what you're interested in. But let's go through some interesting ideas here. um let's go.
Anger, it feels intense. It feels like a threat. And he's been told not to be dangerous. He's been told not to be a threat.
Right, so who has told um men, well, everybody should not be dangerous. That's kind of a normal thing. But I would say if there was an institution that does stop men from expressing themselves or being men in many ways, it would be school. School is better for women who, because they're kind of like sitting down, following rules, and men don't. um, Men are successful because they break the rules and do things. Like if you're a genius, what is it? Like most geniuses are men, and what they do is break the rules, whereas women like to follow the rules, and that's not a bad thing, but so it has its function. So women are good at keeping society together, and men are good at entrepreneuring and going out in the world and making things better, building systems to make people's lives better. So really different functions. So um, if there was something that was telling men that they can't be dangerous or bold, maybe that'd probably be school. School is not good for entrepreneurs, for killing dreams. It's for normalizing you and fit into a narrow way of in narrow kind of definition of success and intelligence. Very narrow, not very useful.
And not to raise his voice and be a good boy and comply. And some of these things can really
So not raising your voice, that would be a school thing. Comply, that would be a school thing. So I can see that there aren't many other institutions telling people what to do. I suppose crappy, boring jobs, yeah, but also it's not all wrong to not be dangerous. It's like social kind of, it's a good thing not to go around harming other people. So there are things built inside of us, like um we want to be good, and to be good means not harming other people. So I think maybe what he's pointing out, and he's I don't think he's very clear. He's trying to grapple with these ideas himself, I guess. um and I suppose I am as well, but I think from a religious point of view, we're clear on what masculinity is, so we don't really have a problem, or we're not so confused like Westerners are. And I think that's one of the major issues: confusion, not having a clear idea, not having a model, like he talks about in a minute. A clear model example of this is how we should be, and this is why we should be like this. Like, how should a man be like? So with Muslims, we've got Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and he's a warrior, so he's that. But at the same time, he would cry and cry for other people's problems. And he told us to shake hands and hug each other and say we love each other. These are all his teachings. So we got clear ideas of how to be with each other. And so we got we as men, as as men, as Muslim men, we have kind of we're comfortable with the full range of the feelings that we need to show. So a model is really important.
Shut a man down from feeling his emotions. Don't cry, etc. So it's
So yeah, so Muslim men cry. Um, we have like I go to these kind of Muslim conventions and we're crying together when we're praying for the world and stuff like that, and no shame at all. It's even a good thing. Um, we're constantly like the model we have is when we pray we should be crying, um, especially by ourselves. So yeah.
less of a thinking problem and it's more a lack of modeling what it looks like to feel your feelings. We've gone through generations of men where they just literally were not taught to feel their feelings.
So I think I'm not sure if it's all true. I think generally we'd be as society started falling apart, maybe we taught not to. Who said don't show your feelings? But maybe he's going to give some examples. But um, I know in British society, men would say love to shopkeeper if it was a woman, but not. But yeah, it's true that they don't have many other ways. Like in Arab society, I'm in an Arab country at the moment, but I'm from the UK. We say Habibi all the time, my love to other men, and Habibti to women, right? So, our love. So, we show a lot of emotions in Arab society. It's very common. Um, and that's partly due to the fact that it's a very family oriented society where you love kids, you love people. Like you could pick up somebody else's kid and kiss him on the cheek. You don't have to ask permission. I remember that happening when I was teaching in a school. A kid turned up. One of the teacher's kids, was in the staff room, and some man just picked the kid up and gave him, I think, or her, I can't remember, a kiss on the cheek and stuff like that, and a hug. You couldn't do that in the UK, right? Whether you're a woman or a man, you just can't express your emotions. So I really do feel sorry for Westerners because it must be terrible not being able to express your feelings, and I think that's one of the reasons why people turn to alcohol. There are many reasons why people turn to alcohol, like trying to essentially drug a potential partner. But people in London, in the UK particularly, we're not. There are so many hidden rules about how we're supposed to express our emotions, and so yeah, and if a rule is hidden, you can't really explore it very well. You know what I mean? You can't discuss it well. As a Muslim, everything's like clear cut. Like this is what you should do. So there's a saying of Prophet Muhammad that says, if you have love for somebody, tell them, you know. Um, and you should love other people. You should love people for the sake of God. And so there's so many things about even the idea of love that Westerners have lost. So for Westerners, love is just like an emotion they feel. Um, I'll give it the Muslim point of view. The Muslim point of view, and should be what love is. Love is a selfless thing. It's not like I feel this because maybe you look hot or something, or you did something for me. I love you because of that. That's a transaction. That's a Western idea. The Muslim idea is you love people. This is a Muslim phrase. You love people for the sake of God, which really technically or practically means you just love selflessly. You just do things because God is watching and God wants you to be generous because God describes himself as the generous. Generous means to do things without the Arabic word where that is translated to generous actually means to do things without anybody deserving it. That's what God does. Like he gives rain, he gives air, whatever. Even if you're a nasty person, you get that, but you get rewarded on top of that if you're a really nice person. But that's another thing. Like God says you should be that kind of generous. You should be loving, giving people. Even if people are nasty to you, you should love them. So I'm going to go back to this modeling thing that this guy was talking about, Connor. Like, Prophet Muhammad went to a town called, I forgot, Daif, right? And he went by himself on a donkey with one other person, and basically people threw stones at him, and he was bleeding, head to toe. And then God said to him, should I destroy this town? And he said, no, no, don't destroy this town. Maybe in the future somebody would believe, right? And he wants people to believe for their own benefit. Okay, because the faith kind of gives you that freedom. So anyway, the point is that example is you just you love people even if they hate you, or even if they persecute you. And when you are able to love like that, you won't feel oppressed or suppressed, right? Because this guy that we're listening to, these aren't like hard and fast. These aren't rules where like the police has come to you and say you can't express your feelings. They're kind of like the culture, a dead culture, I would say, where people aren't able to express their emotions, and people tell other people not to express their emotions. It's kind of like a downhill spiral. So you can get out of it if you want, okay? But you won't get out of it if you've got the wrong attitude to love. So I find the people who are actually feel suppressed and stuff like that are following the culture, and they're following the culture because they're selfish in the first place. So if you're a selfless person, you won't feel the need to follow this individualistic selfish society, and when you're individualistic and selfish, you don't really have many opportunities to show love in a proper way. Love is supposed to be selfless, and if you're selfish, you're not going to be showing much real love. So yeah, so essentially what I'm saying is, if you're feeling oppressed and suppressed and all these kind of things, you probably, this might sound harsh, but it's really useful to know, you probably deserve it. And you can easily get out of these feelings. These are just feelings and subtle things that people told you. There's not, as I say, the police stopping you from expressing your love and all this kind of stuff and whatever. So if you want to get out of this way of thinking, of feeling suppressed or whatever, you need to start by doing good things, being selfless to other people, and you will be attracted. It's like a karma thing, whatever you want to call it. Okay, if you're selfless and kind to other people, then it will come back to you. And I'll give you a very practical example, my own case, that I spend a lot of time sacrificing, like doing stuff like this, but loads of other stuff outside this kind of stuff, right? Where I'm kind of inviting people to my house, even if I'm really busy, calling people up saying, how are you doing? Let's meet up. And so what happens is, and being generous with my words, and being heart emojis with lots of men, being kind and saying, oh, thank you so much. When you are generous, then you start encouraging, you encourage that kind of generous with your love and kindness, then it will come back to you, because people also feel free like that. And if you're stingy and you don't make time for other people, I know people, I've got friends who feel like lonely, and I say, well, you're probably lonely because, I don't tell them this too many times, but I kind of hint it and tell them every now and then, you're feeling lonely because you're not generous. You're not giving time to other people like you should, and then you should expect to be lonely. You need to go out of your way to be kind to people. You need to stop getting upset with people if they say this or that. You should be kind to them regardless. Because when you start getting upset with people and calling everybody toxic and stuff like that, you narrow, your relationships, and you narrow how people can communicate with you. Because imagine people want to express themselves and you get upset with them, they won't express themselves with you anymore. So really, you kind of deserve what you get if you're feeling depressed or suppressed. Anyway, let's keep going with this video.
or they were actively taught to suppress what they were experiencing.
Okay, so we're gonna get some silly examples that really don't affect us. These are kind of things like he's gonna give World War II examples, and think about it. Most of you were not alive during World War II, and if some old man told you, some old person from the World War II era told you what to do, you wouldn't care what they say. So these are going to be silly examples of excuses, not really understanding what the root of the problem is. But here we go.
All of these sayings came out of World War II, like man up was to go get into the tank. Suck it up. I don't know if this is 100% true or not, but suck it up meant when you were in the plane and you puked into your air mask, you literally had to suck it back in.
So, like, okay, man up. Okay, so this, if somebody tells you man up, and okay, sure, it's based on, let's say it's based on World War II, who cares? If somebody tells you man up, what difference does it make? You don't have to man up. It's just some stranger telling you that. Okay, if it's your dad telling you and you don't want to do it, like I'm sure you don't listen to your dad or your mum, whatever, all these different people anyway. So these are just excuses, and they're not really getting at the heart of the problem. So this suck it up is
And swallow it so they continue fighting.
blah blah blah. So suck it up supposedly means suck up your vomit or whatever it is. But like that's not the real reason why we suck it up and we don't show our emotions. These are just silly excuses, quite frankly. They're not really getting at the heart of the problem. The real problem is, well, I could go back to the old thing where when you stop believing in God, everything falls apart, like I said in the beginning of the video. Systems that bring, or structures that bring people together, like church, mosques, and synagogues, or whatever, Hindu temples, those fall apart because like, oh, what's the point? There's no God, right? And then all the rules of how we're supposed to relate to each other, like religion teaches us, that falls apart, including marriage. And so if you don't have marriage, you're not going to feel secure with anybody. You're not, even as a child, you don't feel secure. You're brought up feeling insecure. So there's endless problems by not believing in God. That's the fundamental issue.
There's all of these adages where men have been put into horrendous situations that require them for survival purposes to deploy disassociation, to literally disassociate from.
So so Muslim societies have gone through horrendous situations, right? So look at Palestinians, how they show emotions, right? They kiss their mother's feet and whatever, and they've gone through incredibly brutal situations, right? Being shot at, bombed, have their family being killed in front of them. So despite that, I'm not saying every Palestinian, but you can see on endless YouTube videos, they're definitely able to express their emotions. Why is it that in Western society, where they don't have a war, they haven't had a war for like, I don't know how many years, right? How many years? What, 80 years or something? That's supposed to be the excuse for the reason why they're not able to express their emotions. That can't be right. It doesn't make sense. If you're like, look at the Palestinians, they're in the middle of a war and they can still express their emotions. And we're talking about, here's an excuse this guy is giving, like, oh, there was a war 80 years ago and somehow that has affected men's ability to express their emotions. It doesn't really add up. It's just more like a lame excuse and trying to avoid the real thing of the breakdown of society.
What they are feeling in their body. When a guy feels anger, it feels intense. It feels like a threat. And he's been told not to be dangerous. He's been told not to be a threat and not to raise his voice and be a good boy and comply. And some of these things can really shut a man down from.
I wonder who tells these people. I think it's kind of like you don't really get told that much. I don't remember ever being told, don't talk or something like that. It's just really silly. But it sounds like this guy is essentially grappling for, like, trying to figure out what the hell happened that so many Western people don't feel they can communicate or express their feelings. So if you go to societies where God is really important, so let's talk about Arab societies or African societies. I just come back from Ghana. People are a lot more connected to each other. The more religious they are, the more connected they are to each other. So, as I say, so people do things for each other. They feel they have a duty to each other. And what is love? Love is doing things for each other. And when you stop doing things for each other, and when you stop feeling that this other person is your brother or sister in humanity, then love goes out the window, and then there are less opportunities to, express your feelings. And yeah, I would say most people I know are oppressed or have they suppressed. When I say most people I know from the UK, even if they're religious, actually. So I would say very few people um, that I know are feel they can express themselves on a live stream or a camera or something. Or if they're going to say something, they have to say something that's completely agreeable. They're very concerned about that. So, um, is it just being religious? So, being religious does help you in lots of fundamentals, praying together, keeping families together, but doesn't make you completely free. No, only if you really believe. When it really believe means not just kind of following the rules because you have to, but really believe means that you only have one master. That's God, right? And you do everything for the sake of God. If you have any other masters as in, your mom says you are a terrible person unless you get a master's degree or something like that, that's just another master. And if you be pulled in different directions, when you're pulled in different directions, you feel very weak. You're constantly suppressed by all these other masters. You should say this and you can't say that and whatever. But if you just do things for the sake of God, then you're free, and then you're no longer suppressed or oppressed in terms of feeling, because you do things that you should do. And the other thing is that you're also, if you're confused about what is the proper way to express your feelings, then that confusion is going to suppress you as well. It's like, oh, should I do a love emoji, or should I say I love you and stuff like that? When you're unclear, then you're going to be suppressed by yourself as well. So I think that's a bit more of what's really happening.
Feelings, emotions, don't cry, etc. So it's less of a thinking problem and it's more a lack of modeling what it looks like to feel your feelings. We've gone through generations of men where they just literally were not taught to feel.
Well, that's a really interesting idea. I think materialistic or non-religious or non-spiritual societies are not good at feeling their feelings. So it's not just a man thing. So as I said in the beginning, a lot of the fundamental problems that men are suffering from is a fundamental problems in that both men and women are suffering from, and the whole of society is suffering from. So being spiritual is a very subtle thing. It's constantly reflecting your feelings and thinking, am I doing the right thing? But if you don't see yourself as having a soul and caring about lots of details like that, and you're just concerned about having things, then you become very outwardly, and you forget you stop being able to, or you stop engaging in your feelings. So that's a problem if you stop listening to your feelings. So as a Muslim, we have a thing that we're supposed to be constantly reflecting on our feelings and thinking, are we doing the right thing? And how do you know you're doing the right thing? It's like you judging your feelings. You go, does that feel right? Like you can't go through every single rule. Like the rules can be a little bit well, they're supposed to depend on your feelings in some ways, right? So they're not always completely clear cut in every scenario, and you're supposed to ask your feelings because you're supposed to have a soul, and you're supposed to be able to have confidence in those feelings, because actually God is giving those feelings. So it's like, okay, this is serious stuff, I should listen to their feelings. So when you think your feelings are random, then then you might have problems in connecting with your own feelings. Or if you follow your feelings, your selfish feelings, then that causes another problem where you follow your selfish feelings at the detriment to your own benefit. So the feelings that you're supposed to be you're searching for within yourself is what is the right thing to do, not the feeling of I want this or people I deserve this. That is very destructive. People won't want to talk to you if you're essentially a narcissist, because that's what most people are turning into in individualistic society. So be careful which feelings, but you do need to connect to your feelings. Yeah.
Feel their feelings, or they were actively taught to suppress what they were experiencing. All of these sayings came out of World War II, like man up was to go get into the tank. Suck it up. I don't know if this is 100% true or not, but suck it up meant when you were in the plane and you puked into your air mask, you literally had to suck it back in and swallow it so you continue fighting. There's all of these adages where men have been put into horrendous situations that
So what men are being put into horrendous situations? Like in the modern world, people are playing computer games in their little corners and doing their boring jobs, and essentially people are putting themselves in horrendous situations by, not being brave and doing crappy jobs, and you only keep the crappy job if you're, a proper pet, essentially. So men need to be brave as well, right? They can't just complain like this person is. Okay, and if you just complain, you become really weak, and then everybody can oppress you and just tell you what to do, and you feel like, oh, I'm being oppressed. No, you do need to be a little bit tough, and when you're tough, you become the leader, you become your own boss and stuff like that. And if you aren't tough, then you kind of deserve to be kind of, it's inevitable, or you can say deserve, in the sense of like, you get what you put out. So if you are weak in life, then the inevitable result is you're going to be trodden on and stuff like that. So you do need to be tough as a man. A man's job is to be tough. um they don't have to just show their emotions all the time. A man's job is to sometimes control their emotions, to be a leader, to lead families and stuff like that, which is another problem Westerners face, which is they don't know the kinds of emotions they should show. Like they feel like, oh, women kind of express all their feelings, and people become trans and all that kind of stuff, like in an attempt to fill in the void in the breadth of the feelings they're allowed to express. Like they show some emotion at football matches, they go ooh, 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 yeah, and like this kind of tribal stuff, but that's not really um expressing the kind of the deeper emotions, like, oh, how do you feel, like, how is life going, what are you struggling through. You don't do that kind of conversation at a football match. You kind of have, it's nice to be together at some point, but you're not really expressing anything really important when somebody kicks, a leather ball, filled with air in one net rather than another net. That's not really meaningful stuff, and that's not the kind of stuff that actually makes us happy. We talked about what really makes us happy is meaningful stuff. So in many ways that can make you depressed. Like, a lot of footballers end up being depressed because they kind of realize that they made loads of money, but it doesn't mean anything because you just kicked a ball and got very good at kicking a ball. Anyway, so yeah, there's all these different things. I mean, let's go.
require them for survival purposes to deploy disassociation, to literally disassociate from what they are feeling in their body. When a guy feels anger, it feels
Yeah, so
intense.
this is very interesting. So this guy is trying to blame, World War II for men disassociating with their feelings. But as I said, and he probably wouldn't want this answer. He wouldn't really want the truth. The truth seems to be that disbelieving in God has a lot of knock-on effects. As I said before, like the breakdown of church and community and all the other things that kept community together. And now, you got a place like London where loneliness is the biggest killer, where people are packed like sardines, yet they don't know each other. They don't talk to the neighbors. They don't smile. If you come out of your front door at the same time as your neighbor, you wouldn't say hello. I would, because I'm a believer in God. So I'll give you an example. Like when I was in London, I would be the one who'd knock on everybody's door and give them sweets and everything, because I had a purpose, right? And then when you're not the center of the universe, but you are there to serve other people, then you can start connecting with other people. When you think you're the center of the universe, then you expect everybody to say hello and think exactly, agree, have the same feelings and ideas with you, and you end up just being completely disconnected. So um, it really does come down to believing in God, which has this endless knock-on effects I've described already about 10 times. So, yep. Do comment if you got a question. Otherwise, I'll end the stream there. Hopefully, it'll be useful. Hopefully, what I've said is useful. Even if you take 1% of this, I think people in the West really are struggling with this topic. So, even if you took on one idea and applied it to your life, it would drastically change your life. I do feel what else do I want to add? I feel like there's something to do with alcohol that I want to talk about. Um, people I feel really sad that people need alcohol to express their emotions, or when they express their emotions they do it really negatively. They're not in the habit of showing love because they feel like, oh, that's really weak. So if I go to a Christmas party or something, they only show positive love emotion if they're completely out of it, completely drunk. Or if they're not, completely drunk, then the only emotion that they're able to show are kind of negative ones, or talk about politics and not about themselves and things like that. Not to about, oh, how is life and what are your difficult problems, and all the stuff that actually matters to you. People don't really express themselves. So I suppose if the last thing I want to cover is how do we overcome that. um I'm not sure if I'm going to say anything particularly new, but you feel suppressed if you are a selfish person. That's where all of these problems have come from: individualism and selfishness. And you need to stop being at the center of the universe. Like when I'm talking, most people I know who are my relatives and friends, they can't do what I'm doing right now, because even if they're religious, their idea of religion is a very formal kind of just following the rules and all this kind of stuff. And so they're not able to step out of themselves and express their emotions like they need to. Um, so the simple thing is you get what you deserve. The more generous you are, the more people reciprocate. The more generous you are, the more free you'll become. So those are kind of like, there's really simple rules. You can try it. Yeah, that's it, really. And then you won't depend on alcohol. I've never needed to depend on alcohol. I think anybody who depends on alcohol to be able to express themselves, firstly, they're not really expressing themselves very well. They kind of just say silly things. The people I spoke to who are, high on alcohol. Remember, alcohol is essentially numbing parts of your brain. So you actually become a grown-up child, and you're not really expressing deep emotions. You're just kind of expressing silly emotions from what I've experienced anyway. Or kind of low level feeling emotions, but not kind of your serious problems. Or maybe you just kind of express how depressed and unhappy you are when you're drunk. Anyway, I'll end it there. Thank you for listening, people watching live or later on. Do comment on the video afterwards. I'm always eager to be useful, helpful in some ways. So if you got a comment like, oh, I can't express my feelings because of this, that, or the other, there are probably really easy solutions, even if you're not aware of them. Um, they're probably easy solutions, because like this is just a problem with the human condition. We're being selfish, we're doing things the wrong way, so therefore we're suffering from that selfishness. So there probably would be easy solutions to whatever you're suffering from. Do comment and ask your questions and I'll try to answer. Thank you.